Poverty is one of the most important global problems. A problem that has always been there during the history of humankind and which still exists today despite all the technological progress that we have made throughout history. And poverty is such an important issue that it is addressed in the first goal of the Sustainable Development Goals. That's goal number 1, which is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. It's quite interesting to look at some facts provided by the United Nations on their Sustainable Development Goals website. According to the United Nations, 836 million people today still live in extreme poverty. That's a very high number. Consider that we have currently about 7 billion people living in the world. So we're looking at almost 1/7 of the whole population that is living in extreme poverty. But what does it actually mean to live in extreme poverty or to live in poverty in general? That's something that will be explored further in this session, in our online materials, but also in our classroom. The United Nations provides us with one interesting fact. It says that about 1 in 5 persons in developing countries lives on less than $1.25 per day. So that's an interesting figure. It gives us some idea of what poverty might mean. There are actually many different definitions of poverty, as we will see later on, but this is one very often used definition, that we have a certain poverty threshold that is given in terms of some amount of money that a person lives on per day, per week, per year, so that he or she can meet his or her basic demands. Okay, let's continue. Now, the next fact is about the regional distribution of poverty. That's also something interesting that we will look at in more detail in this session. Let's look at what the United Nations says about that. The overwhelming majority of people living on less than $1.25 a day belong to 2 regions. And those 2 regions are Southern Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. So there is quite some geographical concentration on poverty in certain parts of the world, which doesn't mean that there isn't poverty in other parts of the world, but this is where most extreme poverty can be found today. Furthermore, high poverty rates are often found in small, fragile and conflict-affected countries. Moreover, 1 in 4 children under the age of 5 in the world has inadequate height for his or her age. This already gives us a hint what other kind of dimensions poverty might have. So here we're talking not about money, but we're talking about the effects of poverty on the human body. So it actually affects children in a sense that they have an inadequate height for their age. As a last fact, the United Nations says that every day in 2014, as an example, 42,000 people had to abandon their homes to seek protection due to conflict. So this gives us some hint that there's also a dynamic aspect of poverty, that people are forced out of their homes into sometimes poor living conditions due to external shocks such as a conflict.